Alright, so here's the question for the week. What is the most likely way the Pac-12 can get a team into the college football playoff? It's still possible. However, the Pac-12 is on life support right now, or a good bit of it. There are two ways that I see that are the most likely, that I think most people will agree on, of getting teams to the college football playoff. And I'll go into those later, but first let's talk about Georgia versus Oregon. Oregon had a 46-point deficit in that game. And yeah, look, of course, give Oregon credit. They walked into a neutral site game against the defending national champs. Pretty much most teams, 80-90% of teams, are not going to do that week one. They want to pad their schedule, which I think going into this, the expectation for Oregon, or a good expectation for Oregon, was just to be to keep it close. And then Georgia has a fantastic rest of the season. They lose either no or one game and they get into the college football playoff. And then Oregon, because they just lost to Georgia, is a very likely contender to also get in. That didn't happen. You know, I remember back in 2014, 15, 16, around there when I was in high school, everybody was talking about Oregon, that they're on the same elite level and have the same longevity as Alabama, Ohio State, or even later on Clemson. And that is just not the case anymore. It's nobody's been talking about Oregon like they did back then. Pretty much everyone stopped around 2019-ish, right? And what I think has led to this state that Oregon is in is poor management, poor coaching, poor staff, and poor just overall management decisions. Because I think that if they were ever able to get over the hump and they were on that elite level, they would keep having that longevity to keep propelling them forward each year, but they never got to that. Bo Nix this weekend. Look, these kids are younger than I am. No matter what, especially on a quarterback, I always want to see them do good. And I really wanted to see Bo Nix to prove Auburn wrong. A lot of their fans wrong, that he is the level of quarterback that a elite team needs. And on that Oregon game, it's not his fault that they lost that game. However, I could see no improvement being made from last year. Stetson Bennett, on the other hand, for the first time, that he looked like he owned that Georgia team. He looked like finally he belonged there. Like there wasn't a shadow over his back that was looming onto him that he needed to keep proving wrong. He doesn't feel now that he's going to lose his job. Stetson Bennett, I saw making throws in that game that he's never made before. He looked cool in the pocket. He was staying level-headed. For the first time, it looked like he was the guy at Georgia. Who knows where he could end up? Because I want to keep him. I want to keep seeing him do very good. I think a big thing of why I watch college football is because I want to see these kids go on to the next level of who's going to be on that next level, and to see their careers progress, especially at the quarterback position. So, moving on from Oregon is Utah. And also, credit where credit's due. They walked into the swamp in probably the most hostile environment of that entire first week. And they almost won. However, they still lost to a unranked opponent under a first-year staff, which I'm not knocking them for that. Look, Billy Napier, if anybody's going to do it, it's probably going to be him. That's how much a lot of people are believing in him. And also, they also had to compete against Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson was the player of that entire weekend. He just was. I was seeing him do things that most other quarterbacks just can't do. I was thinking about this. Dan Mullen would probably still have his job if he just let Anthony Richardson play. Yeah, because if Anthony Richardson had played, they probably could have made up that difference against that close Alabama game. They probably would have won against Kentucky, and that would have propelled them to go on and be extremely competitive in the SEC East. If Anthony Richardson played, Dan Mullen would probably still have his job. Yeah. I don't know, just alternate timeline. If Anthony Richardson just played last year, Billy Napier would not be there and Dan Mullen would still be there. Yeah. That's interesting. Billy Napier could, oh man, what would Billy Napier even end up being if he didn't go on to Florida? He probably still would have left Louisiana, but I don't know. That's interesting. What other jobs could he have picked up? Wow. Anyways, I don't even think that Florida won them that game. It was Anthony Richardson that kept making the plays that needed to be made, and they won that game. So yeah, going into next week, Florida does play Kentucky, and now I'm not sure. Going into the season, I was pretty high on Kentucky winning that game. I'm not anymore. That's how good Anthony Richardson looked. But back on Utah. So Utah, and look, Cam Rising looked good. I don't really think Utah looked bad. They looked like a pretty good football team. Their playoff chances are not dead. Not completely dead. It didn't help them taking a loss to Florida. But if they play the rest of their season and not lose a single game after this, they still are not guaranteed to get into the college football playoff, but they will be a real contender. In their run, they're going to have to beat Oregon, and they're going to have to beat USC. And they're going to have to win the Pac-12 championship. They can't take another loss. I don't think they can. So, that being said, they're not dead. It's just that there's no guaranteed way for them to get into the playoff anymore. The next team is USC, the Trojans. So, which I think now is the most likely candidate to get into the college football playoff. Looking at the games that they have to play from now on, they have to play Utah, they're going to have to play Oregon, and they got to play Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame, they still lost to Ohio State. However, that was only an 11-point loss. That's less than 2 touchdowns. They're still very much in the college football playoff. You can say what you want that, yeah, were they overrated at being the 5th in the AP poll? I don't really think so. I think that's just naturally the top 1 or 2 programs each year. The difference between the top 2, maybe 3, and the 5th or 6th team in the AP. That's just the difference. However, that game could have gone differently. They could have gotten an extra touchdown, and now we're talking about a 17-21 game. And everybody would be looking at Notre Dame in a much different light. That just shows you how much the casuals will put on a 11-point loss because Notre Dame did fine. But like I said, USC will later play Notre Dame. They have to win that game, which that's going to be their toughest game. They have to win that. I'm not sure that a USC with a single loss is guaranteed to get into the college football playoff, or at least have a great chance of getting to the college football playoff. Because the three likely teams they're going to lose against is Oregon, Utah, or Notre Dame. If they lose to Notre Dame, then if Ohio State is still in the playoff race, Ohio State gets in. Notre Dame has a good chance of getting in if that's their only loss up to the college football playoff. After that, you pick up a SEC team, and then everybody else is probably going to have a one loss. Maybe not. Does USC get in after Notre Dame with losing to them? Probably not. So they probably have to win that game. And then after that, looking at the Pac-12, USC probably has to go undefeated somewhere. They can probably take one loss. But after that, what do you have? And I could be proven wrong. I mean, look, it's only week 1, of course, and anything can happen. It really can. What is the most likely way a Pac-12 team can get into the college football playoff? Is it Utah if they go undefeated for the rest of their season? Or is it USC? That's my 2 likely. And I'm gonna put USC in. If anybody's gonna in the Pac-12 make it, it's probably gonna be USC. That's me. My heart says Utah, but my brain says USC. Yeah. So let me know down in the comments what you think. Just food for thought. That's kind of how I want these episodes to go. I want to leave questions. I want to leave a discussion going on. So that's basically how this is going to happen. I'm going to talk about a topic, and I might leave it kind of open-ended or with a question. That's kind of how this is going to work.